They mocked the poor janitor until the CEO called him Dad. The mop hit the floor with a loud, wet slap, and the laughter that followed was even louder. "Hey, old man, you missed a spot right there under my shoe." Brandon Hale lifted his designer loafer and dragged it deliberately across the freshly cleaned tiles of Nexus Tower's 32nd floor lobby. A smear of mud stretched across the marble like a scar, and the cluster of junior executives standing around him exploded into cruel, rehearsed laughter. It was the kind of laughter that had a target. Before we go any further, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Now, let's begin. The old man said nothing. He simply looked at the smear, dipped his mop back into the bucket, and began again. His name was Walter Gaines. He was 63 years old with calloused hands, a graying beard, and eyes that had seen more than anyone in that building could imagine. He wore a faded blue uniform with the Nexus Cleaning Crew logo stitched onto the chest pocket. He arrived every morning at 5 a.m. and left well after everyone else had gone home. He never complained. He never explained himself. He just worked. "Pathetic," Brandon muttered, loud enough for Walter to hear. "How do you live with yourself doing this at your age?" Walter paused. He looked at Brandon not with anger, not with shame, but with a quiet, steady gaze that somehow made Brandon shift his weight uncomfortably. Then Walter turned back to the floor. "Ignore him," someone whispered behind Brandon. "He's nobody." Nobody. That word followed Walter down the hallway and into the elevator and into the break room where he ate his packed lunch alone every single day. He had grown used to it. Invisibility was something you either learned to carry or let crush you. Walter had chosen to carry it. It had been 8 months since he had taken this job. 8 months since the accident. 8 months since the hospital bills began arriving like a second job of their own. His savings were gone. His modest retirement fund had been swallowed by medical debt before he even had a chance to fight it. There was no pride too large to sacrifice when the alternative was losing the only home you had left. He had not told anyone why he was here. Not the other cleaners, not his supervisor, and certainly not the sharp-suited executives who treated him like furniture. There was one person he had told nothing to most carefully of all. His son. Marcus Gaines had not spoken to his father in 3 years. The falling out had been ugly, a collision of pride and misunderstanding that neither of them had found the courage to undo. Marcus had built himself from the ground up after leaving home at 18, clawing his way through night school and brutal entry-level jobs until, at 37, he had been named the new chief executive officer of Nexus Technologies. His appointment had been national news. His face had been on magazine covers. And his father, watching from a distance with a heart full of both pride and grief, had said nothing. Walter had not known when he applied for the janitorial position that Marcus now ran the company headquartered in this very building. He had found out on his 3rd day when he saw his son's name etched in gold beside the corner office on the 32nd floor. He had stood in that hallway for a full 5 minutes, unable to breathe. He had not quit. He had told himself it was because he needed the money. But late at night, mopping empty corridors, he admitted the truth to himself. He stayed because being close to his son, even unseen, even unknown, was better than the silence of being apart. On a Wednesday in November, everything changed. Brandon Hale had been in a vicious mood since morning. A deal had gone sideways, his quarterly numbers were in the red, and when he spotted Walter refilling the paper towel dispensers in the executive washroom, something snapped in him. "You know what your problem is?" Brandon said, cornering Walter near the sink. 2 of his colleagues hovered in the doorway watching. You're a waste of space. A man your age mopping floors, taking a paycheck that could go to someone who actually matters. You should be ashamed." Walter turned slowly to face him. His jaw was tight, his hands were still. "Oh, I said—" "I heard you," Walter said. His voice was low, but it filled the room. "I heard every word." Brandon blinked. Something in the old man's tone made him hesitate. But he had an audience, and audiences demanded performance. "Then hear this too," Brandon sneered. "You don't belong here, you never did, you're a ghost." The word landed like a blow. Walter's eyes flickered, just for a moment, with something raw and deep and devastating. He picked up his supply cart and walked out without another word. He did not see Marcus step out of the stairwell behind him. But Marcus had heard everything. He had been on his way back from a private meeting 3 floors down, taking the stairs as he often did to clear his head, when he pushed open the hallway door and froze. The voice coming from inside the washroom was familiar in the worst way, Brandon Hale, one of his top-performing but perpetually troublesome directors, in full cruel performance mode. And the voice that answered him. That voice. Marcus Gaines had not heard that voice in 3 years, but it lived inside him the way certain things never leave. The way the smell of coffee always meant Sunday morning, and the sound of rain always meant a certain blue house with a broken gutter that his father would fix without being asked. He stepped into the hallway just as the cart disappeared around the corner. "Oh, Dad." It came out barely above a whisper. He said it again louder, his feet already moving. "Oh, Dad." Walter stopped walking. His hands gripped the cart handle so tightly his knuckles went pale. He closed his eyes. "Walter Gaines." He turned around. Marcus stood 10 feet away in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a month of Walter's salary. His face was the face Walter had memorized across 1,000 quiet moments of distance, but older now, sharper, carrying weight around the eyes that had not been there before. Those eyes were wide open and filling fast with something that had no professional name. "Marcus," Walter said. His voice broke completely on that single word. "What are you, how long have you?" Marcus could not finish the sentence. He crossed the distance in 3 long strides and grabbed his father by the shoulders, scanning his face the way you search for damage after a storm. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you call? Dad, why are you here like this?" "I needed work," Walter said simply, "and I didn't want." "You didn't want what?" Marcus's voice cracked open. "You didn't want to call your own son? You would rather mop floors in my building than pick up the phone and say you needed help." He stopped, pressed his hand over his mouth, breathed hard. "I didn't know you were sick. I didn't know about the accident. I would have come. I would have been there immediately." "I know you would have," Walter said quietly. "That's exactly why I didn't call." Marcus stared at him. Then slowly, the full meaning of those words settled into him. The fierce, impossible, stubborn love buried inside them, and something that had been locked in his chest for 3 years broke wide open. He pulled his father into his arms and held him with the kind of grip that says everything words have failed to say for far too long. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Down the corridor, Brandon Hale had emerged from the washroom and stood perfectly frozen, watching the CEO of Nexus Technologies embrace the janitor he had just called a ghost. Every drop of color had drained from his face. When Marcus finally pulled back, his eyes were red and he made no effort to hide it. He looked at his father's worn uniform, at the weathered cart, at the hands that had built a home and raised a son and endured far too much in silence. "You are not working another single day in this building as a janitor," he said. You are coming home. Marcus. I mean every word, Dad. His voice was quiet now, but unshakable. We lost 3 years. I am not losing another day. Walter looked at his son, this man he had raised with early mornings and hard lessons, and a love he had never quite learned to say out loud. And for the first time in 8 months, his shoulders came down from around his ears. He nodded. Brandon Hale tendered his resignation the following week, though many inside Nexus said the decision had already been made for him. The story moved through the building the way all true stories do, quietly at first, then everywhere at once. The janitor, the CEO, the father and the son. And Walter Gaines, who had spent 8 months being invisible, became the most remembered man in that building, not because of what he had, but because of what he had quietly, stubbornly, and lovingly refused to give up, even when everything else was gone. His son,